Here is something that will mess with your head a little. The sky has no color. None. Zero. It is just air. So why, every single day, do you look up and see this gorgeous, vivid blue? And why does that same sky turn orange and red at sunset, even though nothing about the air actually changed? The answer is one of the coolest physics stories ever told. And it starts with a beam of sunlight that looks totally plain, but is secretly hiding a rainbow inside it. Sunlight looks white or pale yellow, but it is actually a mix of every color of light, blended together. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, all of it packed into one beam traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second from the sun to your eyes. Scientists have known this since Isaac Newton famously split sunlight through a glass prism in the 1660s and watched it fan out into a full spectrum of colors. That single experiment showed the world that white light is not simple at all. It is a crowd. Now here is where the atmosphere joins the story. Our atmosphere is mostly nitrogen and oxygen molecules, and these molecules are incredibly tiny. Much, much smaller than the wavelengths of visible light. When sunlight crashes into these tiny molecules, something fascinating happens. The molecules do not just block the light or absorb it. They scatter it, meaning they grab the light energy and fling it outward in all directions, like a pinball machine going wild. But here is the key twist. Not all colors of light scatter equally. A British physicist named Lord Rayleigh worked this out in the 1870s, and the math he discovered is now called Rayleigh scattering. His finding was this: shorter wavelengths of light scatter far more powerfully than longer wavelengths. And blue light has a shorter wavelength than red light. In fact, blue light scatters roughly 10 times more than red light when it hits those tiny air molecules. 10 times. That is not a small difference. That is an enormous one. So imagine sunlight pouring into the atmosphere from above. The red, orange, and yellow wavelengths mostly cruise straight through the air with barely any interruption, traveling in a fairly direct path toward the ground. But the blue light, it gets knocked sideways again and again and again. It bounces off one nitrogen molecule, then another, spreading in every direction across the whole sky. By the time you tilt your head back and look up, blue light is arriving at your eyes from every corner of the sky, not just from the direction of the sun. The whole sky becomes a giant blue lamp. That is Rayleigh scattering at work, and it is the real reason the sky is blue. You might wonder, why not violet? Violet light actually has an even shorter wavelength than blue, so it scatters even more. Part of the answer is that the sun sends out more blue light than violet to begin with. But there is also something going on with your eyes. The human eye has 3 types of color-detecting cells called cones, and they are most sensitive to red, green, and blue. Your eye is not very good at picking up violet. So even though violet is scattered abundantly, your brain reads the whole combined signal as blue. Your own biology is painting the sky. Now, for the sunset payoff. And this is the part that makes the whole story click into place. At sunset, the sun is sitting very low on the horizon instead of high overhead. That means its light has to travel through a much thicker slice of atmosphere to reach your eyes. Think about it geometrically. When the sun is directly above you at noon, its light punches through roughly 100 kilometers of atmosphere. At sunset, that same light travels through closer to 1200 kilometers of air before it reaches you. It has to cross the entire long edge of the planet's atmosphere. What happens during that long journey? All that extra atmosphere gives the air molecules even more chances to scatter the blue light away. By the time the sunlight finally reaches your eyes at sunset, nearly all the blue has been knocked sideways and scattered off into parts of the sky you are not looking at. What is left over? The longer wavelengths that were too stubborn to scatter. The reds, the oranges, the warm golds. Those are the colors that survive the long trip and they paint the horizon with those breathtaking, fiery colors that make people stop their cars just to stare. This is not magic. It is geometry and physics working together beautifully. The same atmosphere, the same sunlight, just a different angle, a different distance to travel, and suddenly the whole color of the world shifts. Scientists confirmed and refined all of this through careful spectroscopy and atmospheric measurements over more than a century, building on Rayleigh's original work. The physics is real, it is testable, and it is happening every single moment above your head, whether you notice it or not. So the next time you walk outside and glance up at that blue sky, you are actually watching billions of tiny air molecules playing an endless game of pinball with sunlight. And at sunset, when the sky goes gold and red, you are seeing the survivors, the stubborn wavelengths of light that made it all the way through. The sky has been running this light show for 4.5 billion years, and all it took to understand it was curiosity, a prism, and some really beautiful math.